Hey everybody, and on today's vlog, we're going to be discussing Kodama Forest by Indie Boards and Cards.
Springtime has come again and your forest is blooming. However, the magical Kodama spirits will only grace the most lush and beautiful of landscapes. Plant bamboo and flowers to attract friendly pandas and butterflies to beautify your plot of land. Plan carefully to ensure that your two forests can be filled with as many plants and animals as possible in order to please the colorful Kodama.
Hey Sarah, how's it going?
I'm well.
So what are we discussing today on our vlog?
Today we are discussing Kodama Forest from Indie Boards and Cards. They sent us this copy. Thank you very much. So the game is played with 3 to 6 players, and we played it with my parents, who did not wish to be included in the vlog today. So we're going to just talk about the game. Nick and I also played a 2-player variant. And there are 2 2-player variants, a co-op and a competitive, and then there's also a solo mode as well. So we've played a 4-player game and we've played the 2-player competitive variant. So we're going to be discussing both the standard game and the 2-player competitive game. And there's 2 other things that I will sort of caveat this with. One is that these pieces here are supposed to be in a blind draw bag. However, the bag that was included with our copy was growing some mold. If I reached out to IBC and asked them to send me a replacement, I am 100% sure that they would. However, we had an extra blind draw bag from another game and we just used that. Additionally, they have these frame pieces that you can use. You put these frames together and then you can put them around this right here. And it sort of helps to keep the player pieces contained on the board. We didn't use these just because that was our preference not to use them. However, once I did bump my board and a bunch of stuff got sort of jumbled. And if I would have had these in play, that probably would not have happened. But we just chose not to use these. So those are my caveats. Let's talk about the game itself. So the game itself is a semi-cooperative tile placement game. What's going to happen, this is set up for a 4-player game. What's going to happen is each player will sit between 2 boards. So there would be a player here, there would be a player here, there would be a player right where you're sitting, and then there'd be another player right here. And every round of the game, each player would select some tiles that they would like to play to each of the boards. One for their left board, one for their right board. So what happens is, at the start of the game, each player has 3 of these tiles. Yeah, those are the 3 I want to show you first. And what would happen is, every player simultaneously decides which of their pieces they want to put on which of their boards. So I can look at these pieces and kind of look at my board over here, look at my board over here, and kind of determine which one of these pieces I want to put on which of these boards here. Once every player is ready, you can talk to your teammate and say, I think that we should put this one here because look, it fits here, it covers this up really nicely, or oh, these symbols match up so we can get some stuff here. And then players put these tiles on their board. Now, the board itself looks like this, and there's a few different things going on here. There are these green spaces where there are already Kodama on our board, and those can never be covered over. So you can't put any tiles over those. You can put tiles over the rest of the board, and there's a few pretty intuitive rules for the tile placement. You can't cover over tiles you've already placed. Tiles can't hang off of the edge of the board. You can't move tiles once they've been played. Just some pretty standard stuff there. Now, in addition to the Kodama spaces, there are also these numbered spaces that have 5s and 10s on them, and then there are some blank spaces as well that just don't have anything on them. At the end of the game, for every blank space that is left uncovered, each player will get 1 point. For every space that has a 5 that's left uncovered, they'll get 5 points, and for every space that has a 10 that's left uncovered, they'll get 10 points. What's going to happen at the end of the game is you will add up all of your points from both of your boards, both the board that you were working on with the player to your left and the board that you were working on with the player to your right. And whoever has the lowest total score wins the game. So you do not want points in this game. You want to be covering over your points as much as possible. So what's going to happen is, like I said, at the start of each round, every player will have 3 pieces. They'll decide one to go on their left board, one to go on their right board. You can talk with your partners. You can discuss what you think you should draft. You can even kind of work together. You say, okay, well, I have this piece and you have that piece. If you put yours here and I put mine there, then we'll be able to do this or that or the other. So you can communicate with your partner, but eventually you're going to place a piece onto your board. So I put a piece over here, I put a piece over here, I have 1 left. I'm going to draw 2 more pieces out of the bag. Remember, this would normally be a blind draw bag, so I'm going to draw 2 more pieces out of the bag, and I'm going to have 3 pieces again to start the next round with. Now, these pieces have some different things going on. They have half flowers, they have half ponds, and they have half bamboos. So this is 1/2 of a bamboo, this is another half of a bamboo. If at any time while you are playing, let me set something up here. Okay. If at any time you connect 2 halves of an icon, so here I've connected 2 halves of this flower, or here, let's say, well, yeah, we'll just do that. We'll connect that flower. So let me get a different piece. Here's a good one I can show you. All right, so if I connect a flower, or if I connect a pond, or if I connect some bamboo, I am going to get a special piece. If I connect a flower, I get a butterfly. If I connect a pond, I get a frog. And if I connect bamboo, I get a sleepy little panda. As soon as you make that connection, you can take the appropriate piece and place that anywhere you like on your board, abiding by the normal rules, right? So if this was my board right now and I had just connected this pond piece right here, I could take this frog and put him here, for example. I could also put him over here if I wanted to. So that's what's going to happen. Every round of the game, you're going to place 2 tiles, and then you're going to draw 2 more tiles out of the bag so that you'll have 3 to start your next round with. The game will end when any player board has all of the visible numbers covered up. So if I cover up all of the numbers on this board right here, that is going to trigger the end of the game. We're going to finish that round, and then the game will end. We'll add up our score for both of our player boards, and whoever has the lowest score wins. Now, that is the standard version of the game. For the competitive 2-player variant that Nick and I also played, in that one, each player just gets 2 boards, and on your turn, you play a piece to both boards. So functionally, you're doing the same thing, you're just not working with another player, and you're in complete control of both of the forests. The game ends in the exact same way for the 2-player competitive variant. When any player board has all of its numbers covered over, that triggers the end of the game. And then same thing, you just add up all of the points you would have gotten for anything left uncovered on your board. And again, whoever has the lowest total score wins. So, I really like this one. What do you think, Nick?
Yes, I really enjoyed this one. The polyomino and then the Between Two Castles of Mad King Ludwig. Really, that feeling from playing that game. This was a simpler version than that. The combinations were, to me, a little more satisfying, but you don't have the combos and the little bit of the complexity that the Between Two Castles of Mad King Ludwig offer.
Yeah, so if you're not familiar with Between Two Castles of Mad King Ludwig, it is sort of it's a mashup of Between Two Cities and the Castles of Mad King Ludwig. And it started off as sort of like a satirical game, but they actually made it into a real game with real gameplay, and it's actually a really fun game, but it has a really similar sort of setup where you have two castles and you're working on one with your neighbor to your left and one with your neighbor to your right. It is a much more complex game though, because while it is still a tile placement game, in that game there's a bunch of stuff that happens based on tile adjacency and stuff like that. So it'll be like there's it's all based off of building a castle. So it'll be like if you built a kitchen, if it's next to a living room, then you might score some points. Or for every outdoor room in your castle, if you have this particular room in your dungeon, then you'll score some extra points or things like that. So it has that similar sort of teamwork-esque style where you're both building something with your partners on either side, but it's a much more complex game than this one. And to be honest with you, I think they both serve different sort of purposes, but I really like both of them. But since we are talking about this particular game, I think that it's adorable, and I think that it does sort of that same thing where you're sort of working with your neighbors to build something. I think it does that in a really, really pleasant but simple sort of way.
Yeah.
It's not nearly as complex as castles, but in this game that works.
Yeah, and the end of scoring and the end game is just simpler.
Much simpler.
Everyone can do it on their own, and everyone can come together and just talk about their scores. But this is one where I like the little bit less of the complexity that they're like the simpler gameplay that is in this one, and really enjoy it. And to me, it almost replaces Between Two Castles, but like Sarah said, the differences with both have they have their place. Each of them do. So
I was trying to find our copy of Between Two Castles on the shelf because I wanted to know what the box time was, and I'm not finding it.
I definitely can tell you this is going to be.
I'm not finding it very quickly, but I'm pretty sure that the box time on that game was like probably like 60 to 90 minutes, or maybe even more. Maybe it was like 90 to 120. The box time on this is 30 minutes, and that's not just because. It's just, I think, because it's a much more simplistic game, and I think they both have their purposes, and I wouldn't say that I think like one is better than the other. I know you just said that you prefer this over Castles. I think that they're different enough games. They serve different enough purposes that for me, it's not necessarily like one or the other. They just do different things. But I do really, really like this one. And I like that they were able to take the same sort of semi-cooperative feeling that you get with Castles, where you're working on this castle together with your neighbors. And you sort of you own your failures and your successes with your neighbor, but ultimately it comes down to how well you did overall as an individual. I really like that sort of that sort of scoring mechanic, and I think that it's really, really well implemented.
And you could definitely pace the game, and that's another thing I really like in this game, because of the the game ends when all the 5s and 10s are covered, and if you recognize, this one has a lot more and this one has a lot less, then hey, I can try to mitigate that to where both of mine will end up just around the same time. And
because like in the game we played with my parents, I was working on one board with my mom and one board with Nick, and my board with Nick had a lot more numbers visible than the board I was working on with my mom. And so I started to be a little bit more a little bit differently strategic, right? I had been placing things like very optimally on the board with my mom, and then with the board with Nick, I was like, oh, this fits nicely like over here, or oh, we could do this or whatever. But then I started to realize like, okay, well, I need to cover over more numbers on this board over here. So then when I was choosing between the pieces that I was actually going to place, I wasn't as concerned about covering the numbers up over here as I was over here. And in the end, I think they turned out to be like pretty close, but only because I started to really be strategic about covering over the numbers equally on both of them instead of just one. So you've really got to sort of split your attention between the two areas and make sure that you're treating each as fairly as possible, because if you give all the best stuff to one board and you neglect the other, well, then it's going to turn around and bite you at the end, because you're probably going to end up having to take
because even like one or two of those fives, that's a lot of points. That really just skyrockets you to,
And sometimes it happens that you cover over stuff in such a way that the only way to cover over like even a 10 sometimes, is that you have to end up getting some of these tiles, which means that you have to be strategic about placing your other tiles so that you can actually get one of those tiles and then put it where you need it to go. And you should be doing that anyway, but if you're not paying attention to that and then you end up in a situation where like, I really have to have one of these butterflies to cover over a 10 that I like left open, it can't be covered over in any other way, then you're like, okay, well, it's really, really important for me to get, the two flower pair together.
But also towards the end, and you have this option too, if you can't do anything with what you can't fit your piece, you can go ahead and discard one of your pieces, only one, so you're picking which side that you're trying to put the butterfly on, but you would discard it, then you're able to cover like one of those 10s or one of those 5s. You get a free butterfly when you do that.
Yeah, and that was interesting too, because as you near the end of the game, there are fewer and fewer spaces left open, and so it might end up that the pieces that you pulled out of the bag, you can't fit into your board. They just won't fit. And if that's the case, then you can, like Nick said, you can just discard one of those pieces and instead take a butterfly token and place it anywhere on your board. And there was some strategy to that as well, because there were a couple of times where I was like, okay, I can't fit either one of these pieces on either one of my boards. So if I get rid of one of these, then I'm not losing anything that I could use really well like somewhere down the line. And instead I'll be able to get a butterfly, which I can use, to cover up a 10 or a 5 right now. So yeah. I really like this one. Indie Boards and Cards sent us sort of a stack of games that we've been going through and sort of playing and reviewing and discussing on the channel. And I think of all of the games that they sent us, this one is my favorite. I really, really like this one.
Yeah, I'd have to agree, because I really enjoyed this one. And when I saw the kind of layout it had and the feel of Between Two Castles, I was just like, okay, well, we'll see how this works. And then when we were done playing, I was just like, wow. And then after we were done playing the 2-player variant, I was just like, wow, this is like, if I just want to sit, think, and play, because there's no player agency. You're not.
Well, there is player agency.
Well, I mean, like, you're not interacting too much with another player when you're doing
player interaction.
Sorry, yeah, I mean player interaction. When there's not really player interaction
with
the 2-player variant.
Yeah.
But when it's the other variant, it's nice. You can conversate, you talk and be like, hey, what about this here? What about that there? And then when someone else shows you something that maybe you didn't think, it's like two heads are better than one. It's really nice to just have that, oh yeah, and, the cooperative side of this is nice.
For me, I think I like the 3+ player game better than the 2-player variant.
Yeah, I think I'd play that more than the 2-player variant.
But it was nice to have a 2-player variant. I think the only reason I didn't like the 2-player variant as much as the 3 or more player game was because there is extremely very, very little player interaction, like Nick said, in the 2-player variant. We literally could have sat here and like looked at our boards and pulled tiles out of the bag and then just been like, are you ready? Yeah, okay, next round. Are you ready? Yeah. Okay, next round. We could have done that the entire time we played. We wouldn't have like had any kind of discussion or anything like that unless we wanted to. So we could have just sat there and been very much like next, next, next in the 2-player game. Whereas in the 3+ player game, there was a lot more like, oh, well, what do you think? Oh, what if we do that? Oh, look what happens if we do this? Or, oh, this one fits really well here. And, you know, oh, good job with that. And I think that the mechanics of the 2-player game were more interesting to me, but the table,
Discussion.
the table presence of the game was more interesting to me at the higher player count. Because at the 2-player count, I could really just sort of puzzle out my own sort of thing, right? But working with the other players was more fun, and it was, you know, it was definitely more social and more interactive.
Yeah. Well, all right. This is our board game vlog discussion of Kodama Forest by Indie Boards and Cards. And if, again, you like Polyomino games and you like, you know, Between Castles of Mad King Ludwig, you should definitely check out this Kodama Forest game. And yeah. So until next time.
Oh, there's a solo variant too.
Oh yes, and there's a solo variant. You should also check that out if for all our solo players out there.
We have played quite a few IBC titles, and I have really, really liked a few of them. Most of them just haven't really kind of been my thing. A lot of them tend to be like higher player count, sort of party style games. But Flashpoint Fire Rescue is an IBC title that I really, really like. Flashpoint Fire Rescue is one of my all-time favorite co-op games. I think the only other co-op game I like even as much as I like Flashpoint Fire Rescue is The Crew, which I just flippin' love The Crew. But so IBC has produced a lot of good games. Flashpoint probably being one of my favorite, but this one right here is quickly become one of my favorite IBC titles. I really, really like this one.
Awesome. Well, until next time, we'll talk to you guys later and see you on the next vlog. Toodles!